Hey Emma,
Yes, Madelyn.
what do you sometimes call it when you're playing a PlayStation game and you're just a real button masher and you only ever use that one button?
I don't know. What do you call it?
You call it triangle strategy. Hello and welcome to Talk This.
It's dangerous to podcast alone.
I'm your, do you like hurting other people? host Madelyn.
I'm your, do you like doing war crimes? Host Emma.
And welcome to this Christmas edition of Talk This.
Yeah.
Starting off with the big questions on this holy day. This week on the show, we're talking about very Christmas-themed games, Hotline Miami, and Triangle Strategy.
I mean, you know, triangle strategy, like we said. The triangle.
Right, the Holy Trinity.
The Holy Trinity. I don't know, Hotline Miami maybe has some Christmas vibes.
Does it?
No?
Like, you're right. Jesus died. And in Hotline Miami, people died.
Yeah, that's right.
So,
there you go.
You know, we can connect it that way.
Got there. We connected
2
the dots.
minutes in, blasphemy happening. So let's start with Hotline Miami. Hotline Miami is a game that I have to admit, I think in my mind was a car game.
You're thinking of Hotwire.
I am.
Yeah.
But in my head, I now remember what this game is, but when I hear the title Hotline Miami, I think of some kind of car game. Which is wrong. Hotline Miami is in fact a top-down shooter.
Yes.
From David Games, which is Jonathan Soderstrom, some Swedish umlauts in there that I'm sure I pronounced incorrectly, and Dennis Wedden. And I do want to share the Google people also ask when you Google Hotline Miami.
Yeah.
That came out for me. First one was, what's the point of Hotline Miami? Which,
yeah.
You know, it's a good question to ask. Is Hotline Miami okay for kids? Probably not.
No.
I mean, you know.
I'm just based on, it's hard.
Yeah, too difficult.
Too difficult for kids.
Why is Hotline Miami so addictive? Well, we'll probably talk about that.
Yeah.
It's commentary on the violence in it. And is Hotline Miami a true story? They go with no.
No.
No to that one. So I did a lot for the people also ask Google search. Anyway, from David Games, published by Devolver, one of Devolver's big.
Like their first big thing.
They did Serious Sam.
Yeah, but they'd just been doing Serious Sam,
Yeah.
which was maybe we'll talk about it one day, but it was an established series, basically. So this was their attempt, their foray into something new and riskier, basically.
And we'll talk about this more, probably made them what they are today.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, and it came out for Windows in 2012. It's now on pretty much anything.
Yeah.
It took a long time to come to Xbox, I think, but you can play it on Mac, you can play it on PlayStation, you can play it on Xbox. There's a Switch double pack that I almost bought impulsively, but then I thought, no, you have to play Triangle Strategy.
Yeah.
And also you will be bad at this, probably.
Yeah.
I'd beat Katana Zero.
Yeah, you do play some games that are sort of
not
in this vein.
This.
Yeah.
I have played some of Devolver's Urv.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Is that how you say that word?
I thought so.
I mean, I believe you, okay, because I learn words from reading, usually,
yes.
And I don't know how to pronounce them. I just thought it was ouvre.
I like it better that way, so I put them in Devolver's Ouvre. Anyway, Hotline Miami is in fact not a Pixar's Cars take.
No.
It's set in 1989 Miami, surpriser. It follows the silent protagonist, who has become known in the fan community as Jacket.
Yes.
He wears a Letterman jacket. And you sometimes wonder, what would your clothing name be?
I have no idea.
Sherpa Pant.
Sherpa Pants. Only during the winter.
Winter 2020, 2021. And he's got a phone as one did in the 80s.
Yes.
And he gets coded messages on his answering machine that are actually telling him to kill the Russian mafia, which he does with extreme verve.
Yes.
Also, he hears from a man in a chicken mask.
It's like his dreams.
Yes.
Yeah. He has dreams with enigmatic people in animal masks.
You know, a dream from 3 enigmatic people is sort of Christmas themed. Now that you mention it.
You're right, it was his ghost.
Hotline Miami. Just a take on A Christmas Carol.
It must be. I think so.
Can you imagine?
So Hotline Miami does have, like, plot and lore going on in the background. But it's very much something that's, like, the plot and lore is sort of like a bonus thing to it.
Well, they weren't even planning on having any plot
Yeah.
and lore. Devolver was like, you should consider some lore here. And they were like, okay.
Yeah. I mean, they added the story the way they wanted to do it.
Exactly.
Devolver just said, maybe you should put in some story.
Yes.
And so you can piece together something that's coherent from it, but probably not on your first playthrough if you're really, like...
Yeah, it's definitely sort of a more impressionistic and just weird.
I did cite Lynch, David Lynch.
Yes, a lot of David Lynch.
Yes, and Drive, a movie I've yet to see still.
Put it on your movie night list.
It is, yeah.
I feel like I need to become someone who...
There's your Cars, Madelyn.
Drive,
Yeah.
right. Sorry, I thought you were talking about Pixar's Cars.
No.
Yeah, I was like, I don't think so.
You need to become somebody who what?
I don't know.
Watches movies?
No, like, understands David Lynch.
I don't think you need to become someone like that.
No, I don't know. I feel like my persona is someone that should probably have appreciation for David Lynch. Anyway, Hotline Miami, I have to say, is on the Wikipedia Greatest Games of All Time list.
Yes.
And for, I think, good reason. I mean, it's a nice, tight, it's a 5-hour game.
Yep.
If you're curious about it, and it's like ultra-violent sort of shooter seeds here, you can pick it up. It's pretty cheap. This is not an advertisement for Hotline Miami, but I considered doing it. And it's definitely, for a game that came out only 10 years ago, really quite influential in this particular sphere of indie games.
Yeah. I've been thinking about it as you're playing Neon White, but there's part of, that
definitely.
sort of reminds me of Hotline Miami in terms of, like, the discrete levels and also, like, the use of music that's supposed to be, like, propulsive.
Yes, the music, the propulsive music, and the kind of, like, synthy music style definitely carries over. I think even the kind of, obviously the gameplay of those two games are very different, although they both involve shooting.
Yes.
But the precision element of it, I mean, not exclusively from this, but the people who made Ghost Runner, which I think of as quite similar to Neon White, have talked about how this was an influence.
Yeah.
So it all strings back.
So, as Madelyn said, what you do in Hotline Miami is you have, like, little sections where you're in your apartment until you get a call that's like, go take out the laundry.
Make sure it's all dry.
Yeah, and you get into a car and it brings you to a level where you have to kill everybody in the house. And it's top-down, like, arcade shooter style. So you go around corners to get through the enemy units, and you don't get hit, and you hit them all while funky music plays. Until the very end, where you kill the last person in the area, and there's just, like, some reverb silence until you walk back through the whole level and get into the car again. And then you go to, like, a store for a little bit and buy, like, a snack, and then you go home.
Just another day's work.
So you have, like, several discrete rooms, like, houses that you have to clear out, and that's, like, the level, and you do it all in one run, right? And then you move on to the next one.
Which, as you might be starting to imagine, so on one hand, it's this, like, as Google says, very addictive sort of arcade shooter. But then at the end, you have this cut the music, walk out past all these bodies moment.
Yes.
And I do feel like 2012-ish, when this came out, was this sort of moment for games being like, but violence is kind of bad.
Yeah.
And Hotline Miami in a different way than something like Spec Ops, in a very different way than something like Spec Ops: The Line, which we talked about
a while ago
in our patriotism episode.
Yeah.
It's one of my favorite episodes of Talk This, by the way. I'm just like throwing it out there today. I'm like, this game's like Jesus. I love the episode where we talked all about the military being bad.
Yeah.
Right? I'm just going all in. But which Spec Ops I think came out in the same year or right around there. But there's this whole kind of little crop of games that was grappling with this idea of like, what if people shooting on games is bad? What if liking that is bad?
Yes.
And Hotline Miami is a little sillier about that, I think, than some of that oovy.
Yeah.
But nevertheless, it falls in that category. That's part of why I think it has maintained a lot of influence.
Yeah. I think in one of the retrospectives I was reading, it was talking about this sort of bit in games history where there was a lot of like, you know, the thinking about like the violence in games in a very 2010s way. Mm-hmm. in a lovingly very 2010s way. Yeah. And they pointed out that it was around this time that the Supreme Court said that it was art, right? Mm-hmm. That games were art and were protected under the First Amendment.
Yeah.
So I think maybe that was on a lot of people's minds at the time. And maybe that influenced it a little bit.
Well, it's also interesting as a counterpart to, like, Braid and Journey.
Yes.
Which were coming out in this sort of general zone of, like, okay, you have indie games that are, like, art.
Yeah.
And then you have these other games that are, like, sort of interested in asking questions. Like, I think it was one of the developers who at one point said, like, you know, we played, like, Journey, we played Braid or something. We were like, oh no, it wasn't them. It was an article that was talking to a bunch of people who said they were influenced by this game. And one of these other developers was like, you know, I played Braid and that seemed like hard. It seemed like hard. You just like think to make Braid. But Hotline Miami seemed like I could figure out how to make this.
Well, they made it in Game Maker, which was really surprising to me. So Game Maker is like something where you can make games. Yeah, that you don't have to program. So you see, you know, like RPG Maker, you get a lot of those like little kitschy like horror games out of. Mm-hmm. So it's very basic stuff. Because he was like, I don't want to learn how to program. And then he did learn how to program. But like when they were making Hotline Miami 2, they moved out of Game Maker because they were like, why we can't do this anymore.
But the fact that this was, you know, a 2-person team, that it was made in Game Maker, it's interesting to hear about. You know, we talk a lot about games that are like, oh, like this game was really influential because of something about the game, right? And that's true of Hotline Miami. The like really bold neon aesthetic of it and the soundtrack and even the like particular sort of level shooter style obviously have carried forward into a lot of indie games. But it was striking to me in reading some of these articles how many people were like, actually what was inspiring to me about this was that like these 2 guys who didn't know anything. This is not true. Like he made like hundreds of just like random little games, right? Yes. But basically like these 2 guys on their own with like no real games industry knowledge other than playing around with Game Maker a lot, were able to make this really successful, really critically acclaimed game, and that made it feel like I could do that too. Yeah. Which is so interesting. I just feel like you don't read as many stories about people not just being inspired by the content of a game, but being like, I see the way they made this, and that inspired me too. Yeah. Which is funny because I feel like developers sort of killed that a little bit.
What do you mean by killed that?
I just mean how many 2-people game studios are out there anymore.
I mean, I think that they publish a lot of them.
Sorry, you're right. I just mean like the elevation of the indie. Like that these... I guess what I'm saying is it's still... Obviously, I've talked about this a lot on the show before, is that like the indie market was really different 10 years ago. And it's interesting to think about this, you know, in tandem with like the rise of Devolver as like a... Obviously, they publish a lot of indies, but Devolver's like a quote-unquote indie.
No, they're an indie publisher.
Sorry, I just mean, like, they're worth a lot of money. Yes. At the time of this, they were, like, it's different now. Like, this game, they found out about this game because, like, someone else they were working with sent them, like, a bootleg copy of it. Yeah. And that's not how it works. No.
Well, to be fair, that guy was like, that was stupid of me.
Right. But
I shouldn't have done that.
But it worked. Anyway, Hotline Miami got a ton of critical acclaim even at the time. Right? This is the kind of game that feels like it would be a cult classic, but it is not.
I mean, it is, sorta.
I mean, it sort of is, but it feels like it would be like a cult classic.
Okay, sure.
And instead, it's just a cult classic.
Yeah.
But they did have some very 2010s marketing. I love, like, Devolver opened a phone line in Miami so people could call and leave their own voice messages, which is really weird when you think about the actual voice messages in the game.
Yeah.
These are death messages.
Yeah. But they're fun ones, you know?
They are fun ones. They are fun ones. There was a sequel.
Yes. Hotline Miami 2, Wrong Number, came out in 2015 to much more mixed response.
The ending of that game is shocking.
I don't know. We're in an industry with Fallout.
I know, but just the idea of this game that starts out being like, you're a dude killing the mafia, and it ends with spoilers. Not that the stories of these games are like...
Well, Hotline Miami 2 is like the thing they focused on when making a sequel. It was originally going to be DLC, and then they were like, we can't work in Game Maker anymore, and
yeah.
we want to change so much stuff. We might as well make this a sequel. But the thing that they were expanding was mostly the story, right? They were thinking about what they could do, and they thought, well, the gameplay is pretty good as it is. I think the only thing they did was, like, try to put more emphasis on guns in the second one.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas the first one, you could get a bunch of different masks that would have different perks based on what mask you were wearing. And the guns were sort of, like, incidental and more, like, melee combat focused in the first one. So what they decided was that they wanted to expand out, like, the narrative elements a lot. And they also made it much harder, sort of on accident, it seems like.
Yeah.
I watched an interview with them, and they talked about how, like, they didn't think about it. Like, they wanted it to be challenging for them when it should have been easy for them.
Right.
Like, that's what they were saying. Like,
yeah.
if it was challenging for us, that
means
shouldn't
it's
have
way
been
too hard.
That shouldn't have been the standard difficulty.
Yeah.
So they said they probably should have had normal mode be hard mode, and then make an easier mode that was normal mode. But alas, they did not.
Maybe for Hotline Miami 3.
And so the hugely expanded story with, like, you only played as Jacket and the biker, who had, like, parallel stories that also kind of contradict each other. So sort of
this game is about the vibe.
Yeah.
The first game is anyway about the vibe.
But the second game has, like, a ton of protagonists, and it's sort of like a short story collection in a weird way.
Which is something that you feel like would work.
Yeah,
this.
well, I mean, for some people it did.
Yeah.
It just wasn't universally praised like the first one.
Right.
Apparently it got very nasty, actually. I was watching the No Clip documentary with them, and they talked about how, like, he just had to stop going on, one of the developers had to stop going on forums because, like, he was getting, like, death threats.
Yikes.
Which, you know, gamers.
Yeah.
That's pretty standard for
That's
gamers.
Just a Swedish dude, though.
Yeah.
Like...
but, like, people just hated it. And he was like, I'm not against criticism, but, like, it was... There were places where it was, like, awful.
Yeah.
And they are working on a new game now, apparently, but they haven't released anything since Wrong Number.
Yeah. Well, something else that felt like out of another... Oh, sorry. I did want to say, like, it's banned in Australia, the second game.
A lot of games are banned in Australia.
It's, you know.
There's violence.
Yeah. But something else I thought was interesting and that I feel like you wouldn't see today is Hotline Miami, like all video games, got pirated a lot.
Yeah.
I mean, especially like all small, easily downloadable video games, but like all video games. And the developer was like, I am broke. I'm broke right now, basically, he said. And he was like, whatever, people are going to pirate the game. So he released a patch for the pirated version so people at least wouldn't have a crappy experience with it. Which is like, not in 2022, you didn't.
No.
Only in 2012. But I'll circle back to Devolver a little bit here because, yeah, I mean, like Emma said, this was definitely their first step into the kind of publishing they do today, and like very much set the tone, I think, for the kind of stuff that they are known for today.
Yeah. They still do stuff.
I don't mean to say they only do
Yeah,
this,
but I mean, their image is definitely more sort of edgy. But they do stuff outside of that wheelhouse. They published Fall Guys.
Right.
So.
Sorry, I don't mean to say they only do that. But
I was not saying you said that.
Right.
I was just expanding.
Totally. But I was struck by a quote in one of the articles that was like, the cliche is, it's X with more violence. Is the Devolver, like... aesthetic, which, you know, seems right. I also like to quote, this is from the co-founder of Massive Monster, which did Cult of the Lamb, which we talked about. When was that? A couple weeks ago? And he said, Devolver is punk rock, but they have a lot of money. They're like, if you need more money, we'll give it to you. We're edgy, but we don't live on the edge.
Yeah.
It's like...
That's good for publishers.
That's what you want your publisher to be. But finally, I want to talk about, you know, there's a lot of like cameos for Cult of the Lamb, yikes, for Hotline Miami in various games. So it's like turned up in some No More Heroes stuff because those guys are big fans of each other. One of the developers for this game got like Suda's autograph on his arm when they met, and he didn't wash his arm until he could get it tattooed, which is really funny.
Yeah,
they were doing an interview with Suda, and he was like, like, they got me this leather jacket, and how dope is that? And the interviewer was like, are you going to get that tattooed? He was like, well, wouldn't be able to go to the sauna anymore, so no. But also made a cameo, and you'll have to tell me if this makes any sense, because I read this and I was like, didn't the apocalypse happen in the 80s in this game? But in The Last of Us Part 2.
I don't know what you
Ellie
mean.
kills someone with a Vita?
Oh, yeah.
That is playing Hotline Miami.
Yes, that doesn't make it canon.
What?
If the apocalypse happened... the apocalypse doesn't happen in the 80s in The Last of Us. What are you talking about?
Why did I think the apocalypse happened
I think it happens in modern day, and then it takes place in the future.
Oh. Man. Can't wait to talk about that game.
I thought you meant because you didn't say what happens in Hotline Miami 2, but spoilers, everyone dies in a nuclear bomb at the end.
Because that's what you would expect starting the first game.
It's, you could say it's a little bit about, like, you know, if the first game is like, what does it mean if we revel in this violence? The second game is like, if you continue reveling in violence forever, what is your ultimate fate? And, like, it's to die in a nuclear bomb.
You know, that's
basically.
fair. That is fair.
I thought you were saying, like, The Last of Us is, like, canon to the Hotline Miami universe.
That's not what I meant.
I was like, I don't know where you're getting that from.
No, I just thought the apocalypse in The Last of Us happened before the beta, but
no,
it's fine. That's okay. I guess that makes sense. Anyway.
He has a smartphone.
Does he?
Yeah, you look at it in the beginning.
I don't remember that. I didn't look at my smartphone. All right. Well, before this becomes another Last of Us podcast, I'll just leave everyone with this final question on Hotline Miami. Just imagine me as a dude wearing a chicken mask in your dreams. Do you like hurting other people? And with that, it feels like, you know, asking a question like that. Emma, give us 3 possible answers that our listeners could pick from.
If it's for the money, no, I love people. For freedom. I don't know. I think that sort of sums up the 3.
It's Triangle Strategy. A March 2022 tactical role-playing game from Square and Art Dink for the Nintendo Switch, and now for the PC as of October. Just sold 1 million copies, formerly known as Project Triangle Strategy, which is really a shame that they didn't keep that.
Team Asano, just, like, it's always Project, like temporary name, and that's always they just take the project off, and that's the final name.
Speaking of the name, there was a good quote about this from Asano. He says, like, he was talking about the names, right? And, like, that they pick the weird titles, like, a little bit on purpose, and they, like, focus test them, and they make sure the native English speakers say this sounds like it was named by a Japanese person, right? Because this is the studio that's behind things like Bravely Default.
Octopath Traveler.
What's the life one?
Various Day Life.
Various Day Life, thank you. I couldn't quite remember. And Triangle Strategy, so you kind of get the vibe, right? It feels like an AI named it. Right?
Well, I mean, it's to their credit, it's like it is like that. Those make sense as temporary titles, right? Yeah. They're always named after like the core idea behind the game. Like Bravely Default is like their battle system in that game. Octopath Traveler is about traveling with 8 different characters. And Triangle Strategy is a strategy game where you have 3 different alignments.
Yeah.
Like, I get them, you know?
No, it's good. I wish more stuff had, like, totally weird names like that. It's good. But I did like, he was talking about other Square games, and they were talking about Final Fantasy, and this particular article said that franchise is now approaching its 16th mainline entry, which does inspire some jealousy in Asano, at least when it comes to naming conventions. Quote, "Of course it's easier to just put a number at the end," he says.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, a little bit of intra-Square rivalry.
Hey, he did, you know, well, he did Bravely Second.
Bravely Second.
And also Bravely Default too.
We won't talk about that. Anyway, in Triangle Strategy, it's like Fire Emblem, but it's not, as Emma told me over and over and over and over again when I played this.
Yeah.
It's a grid-based fight thing. I don't know. I saw plenty of stuff that was like, why does everyone compare it to Fire Emblem? But Fire Emblem is the casual gamer's, grid-based, turn-based tactical role-playing touch point.
Yes.
So that's why. Where you play... Oh, man. I have to say in advance, folks. You know Madelyn's Lore Corner? You know how we on the podcast would be like, Madelyn, tell us the lore of this game. We cannot do that with this game.
To be fair, the background's pretty easy.
It is. There's 3 people. There's Iron, there's Salt, and there's...
Trade.
That's so stupid.
They have all the rivers.
I know, but like, it's Iron, Salt, and Trade.
Yeah. Well, how else is the Iron and Salt gonna get anywhere?
I don't know. You're right, but it's still, like, it's not like they control the Suez Canal.
Well, they're the smallest country, too. So.
Okay, whatever. So, there's these 3 semi-medieval countries, as there always are. And 30 years ago, they had a war, creatively called the Salt Iron War.
Yes.
Which, I guess wars don't generally have that exciting names.
No.
So I can't fault the Salt Iron War. But can you guess what it was about, listeners? That's right. Salt and iron.
Yes. Yeah, so in this weird continent, Norzelia, Glenbrook is in the middle, dealing with trade between the other 2 countries. Esfrost has all the iron. And Hyzant has all of the salt.
Literally. Not,
yes.
Like, personality-wise.
Yeah, no. They have this place called the Source, which is the only place that salt comes from. And of course both countries are, like, exorbitant in their control of this singular resource. But everybody seems most upset about salt, which, fair.
I think about this a lot. I have this conversation with Click Boyfriend about once a month, whenever we're eating something that we've made that's good and involved the use of a lot of spices.
Mm-hmm. I'm
like, just think. At one point, you didn't have these.
Yeah.
And I think about that all the time. Listeners, I'll pose my ongoing question. When in history do you think that food tasted the best?
I don't know.
Do you think it's now because we have access to any spices and any salts that we want? But all of our stuff has been factory farmed. to last shelf life as opposed to being delicious.
I don't know.
So have we missed the peak? Anyway, not really relevant to triangle strategy, except I think about salt sometimes.
They eat in Pentiment, you have like meals with people, and they eat like bread and cheese and like porridge. I'm like, oh man, yum.
You could eat bread and cheese and porridge all the time if you wanted to.
I just think about that. Like, they're just like eating like nothing, basically.
But that bread probably didn't have salt in it.
Yeah, true.
So, like, when I put half a pinch too little salt into my, like, bread, it's awful.
Didn't they use salt to, like, preserve things, though?
Yeah, but also, didn't they have to, like, didn't Mansa Musa, like, go all the way across?
I don't know.
Me either. Wasn't salt, like, a whole thing with Ganamali Songhai?
Anyway, in Triangle Strategy, you play as the young Lord Serenoa. And he is...
That's all one word. It's not like the modern name Sarah, the modern name Noah. It's not Sarah Noah.
Serenoa.
It's Serenoa.
Serenoa.
Just for clarity.
His bride-to-be has just arrived from Esfrost. They're having him, because they're like the right hand of the royal family, his house, and like the bastard daughter of the Archduke marry to like be an alliance, but not that good of an alliance, you know.
Yeah, like an alliance that it'll be okay if everybody goes to war again.
So they're getting married, and also Serenoa's father is sick, and so is abdicating.
That's a secret, though.
Yeah, so is abdicating his position for Serenoa to take up the mantle. So we come into it 30 years after the Salarian War. He's getting married, he's going up to his house, and all of the nations are here because they're opening up a new mine in Glenbrook all together.
God. Emma, tell me more about the mine. I love when the game tells me all about this. This is the game that I played this time, in case anyone was wondering. I played about 4 hours of this game.
Did you at least get to the point where my boy Dragon is like really drunk talking about the mine? I love that.
Also really weird. This was a character I did not know, and just all of a sudden he was just like wasted, being like, I love mining.
I love that scene. He's just like, he's having fun. He loves the mine.
Look, if you're into natural resources, if you, like me, have reached the point where Duolingo is teaching you how to talk about natural resources, this is the game for you.
Yes. They did really want this to be like political, you know.
Yeah, it's like if you've gotten used to, I don't know, maybe there are dragons eventually. Right, I won't
spoil it.
But like, it does feel like if Fire Emblem does a lot of sort of fake political drama, but really it's all about the dragons.
Yeah.
This game seems to be very into mining.
Yes. Yeah, I would say Triangle Strategy is really into like the relationships between countries versus the relationships between characters, basically.
I read that somewhere and it was a red flag for me. To be honest, I read that, I was like, oh, okay.
Yeah, so I've played and finished Triangle Strategy. I got the golden root on my first playthrough. So the way that it works, right, is you have your 3 different convictions, and there's endings that correlate to these 3 different convictions. Or if you take a very specific route through the game, you can get like the best ending. Basically.
Did you do that on purpose?
No, I did not do it on purpose.
Wow. I'm glad I asked that same stupid first question that you did. Feeling good.
But for me, my enjoyment of Triangle Strategy was like a big like lump. Like, it is so dull at the start. It gets really fun and interesting in the middle, and by the end, you're like, oh my god, finish already. And that was sort of my experience with it.
That's always the thing with these, you know, tactical RPGs, though. They are always like 10 hours too long. Fire Emblem's about 30 hours too long, but
I played 400 hours in Fire Emblem, so that is not relevant to me.
You have to acknowledge that Fire Emblem is like a little too long.
I don't know.
Oh boy. I'm starting to get into it now that there's more fights.
Yeah.
This is so uncharacteristic of me to be there's too much dialogue.
There's never, I don't think, that chunk of scenes again.
Okay, we'll see. All the reviews are like, you finish a battle and there's an hour of cutscenes, which I welcome in some games, as we all know.
Yes.
But, I don't know.
Anyway, so so you have your tactical turn-based battles. This is done, unlike Fire Emblem where you have player phase and then enemy phase, it's done on like a timeline. So like a character will get a turn, maybe another one of your characters get a turn, then an enemy, then another one of your characters. It's just based on the character's speed, basically, how fast their turn comes up.
Like Pokemon now.
Yes. And like different characters have like different specialties, a little bit more like they could, like some of them are healers, some of them do magic, some of them have different ranges, some of them can buff other enemies,
the classic RPG roles.
And the other ones have like really specialized thing, like there's a character that can move twice or a character that can draw fire to them or whatever. So you get a whole bunch of different characters depending on what route you go, and you can choose the ones that suit you best in different battles.
And then you spend a bunch of time between that watching scenes of political intrigue, and then also running around town.
Yeah.
Chat with folks, and occasionally getting asked questions with 3 answers.
Yes. You can also gather information in certain things. So in these exploration sections, you affect your alignment by answering questions, pick up items that happen to be sitting around, and also learn information that can be used when you hit the big choices. So at the big choices, I can't remember what they're called. The scales of judgment, maybe.
Conviction.
Scales of conviction. Is like when you have like a big thing happening in the story, and Serenoa wants to ask all of his retainers, like, okay, so what do you think we should do in this situation?
For instance, in the first one, you are choosing which of 2 countries you're going to travel to.
Yes. Sometimes you have 2 options. Occasionally you have up to 3 options. And each of your party members will have their own opinion about what they want to do, and you can go up to them and attempt to sway their opinion to the one that you want, essentially.
Yeah.
And to do this, you pick the right dialogue options. It helps if your convictions are aligned with the choice that you're actually making. And if you've picked up information, sometimes you can use this. Is not always the best choice.
It was the best choice. Spoiler, sorry, it was the best choice the first time.
Yes, but hot tip for you, it is not always the best choice to use the information. Be that easy.
Yeah.
I found this out the hard way once, where I was like, oh man, I screwed up that one. I still got the choice I wanted, but one person was like, no, Serenoa, you're stupid.
Serenoa.
And different allies will be more or less set in their decision as well. And Serenoa will have like a little thing like, oh, this one's stuck like a stone wall, or like they don't seem so sure, or whatever. To sort of tell you whether you have a really good chance of swaying them or not.
Mm-hmm. So I'm enjoying it so far. I mean, the combat is fun. You need to play the beginning. Like, if you got like a big train ride or something coming up, you need to be...
If you want to fold laundry during the beginning...
Emma recommends it's a good laundry folding game. Just be careful. The Verge, in their review, did say, there are lengthy moments of exposition in between battles. Some so long that my Switch actually went to sleep when I had it set to autoplay. So, move the joystick around.
Every once in a while, yeah.
But yeah, if you have chores to do, or a train ride, or something, because I do feel like I've now gotten to just before the next battle in the country that I chose to go to.
Yeah.
And it sort of feels like it's picking up a little bit. And I did do a Mind Palace battle in there to spice things up.
Yeah.
Too. But, yeah, you gotta power through those first 3 hours or so, it seems. Maybe you could go through a little faster if you can skip through more voice dialogue than I do.
Yeah. Also
the voice acting.
I think I talked about this when I talked about it for our save data ones.
Yeah.
It just feels like there's a weird vocal direction choice more than the voice actors are bad.
Yeah.
Like, they just... Maybe it's to make it feel old-timey.
It
but
is
like,
in that HD 2D Octopath Traveler style.
But, so I mean, Octopath Traveler doesn't sound like this.
No, I know that. I just mean, like, it's imitating these older games.
Yes. Well, Not Octopath Traveler. But it's trying to be very
sorry, that was not a clearly directed sentence. What I mean to say is it's in the style of Octopath Traveler, which graphically is itself imitating in a modern way the style of these older RPGs.
But also, like, Triangle Strategy is supposed to be, like, a political drama, like, sort of Game of Thronesian sort of...
So no dragons.
Yes, no dragons.
Maybe no dragons, who knows?
No dragons so far.
So far, no dragons.
And so maybe, like, the directors, like, told everyone to have sort of a flat affect.
Yeah.
Like, some people can do it better than other people, but it's just, like, everybody talks kind of muted, I think.
Except for Benedict, who is full-on narrating.
Yeah, I like that.
I do too.
It works.
Funny,
but like for all the main characters who are like nobility and stuff, like the bandits obviously have a little bit more going on inflection wise. But it's like they told them not to get like too emotional at any point.
Yeah.
So it creates this like weird flatness to the voice acting that I don't really think is anybody's like any of individual actors' fault.
Right. It's just a weird direction.
Yeah.
I do have to call out, because we talked about it on the side quest last week, this game definitely has the wall of NPCs.
Yeah.
Built in, baked in.
Is it just the cutscenes, or do the exploration sections bother you? Because those aren't even voiced.
Sorry, I didn't even mean not as necessarily like this is actively a bad thing. I was just saying this is definitely a great example of the wall of NPC structure.
I guess so, yeah.
You go to a town and you must talk to everyone in town.
Well, you don't have to. You have to remember that. You don't have to.
But you do, because like two of them will have important information that is always the correct information to use when you are persuading your party.
Madelyn has already forgotten my tip.
It's just like Fire Emblem, right?
Yeah.
Play it just like Fire Emblem.
Yeah. Yes, the other way is not like Fire Emblem, which I guess if you're playing on casual, it is like Fire Emblem, but we have
a judgment on that, though.
I don't have a judgment.
We have a stance on how you should play Fire Emblem.
And it's by resetting the whole game every time somebody dies. Yeah. There is no permadeath feature. And levels are very much built around this, right? Like, I was very stubborn and was like, I don't want anyone to die ever, right? Mm-hmm. Because, like, share the experience, right? I don't want people to die and lose out on that. But there are levels where you absolutely have to let people die or retreat. Yeah. You know, or there's no way you will be able to win it.
Try me. No, just kidding. Somebody did already die in the level.
I got to like one really hard level. That I thought was really hard because I kept resetting anytime anyone died. But in fact, it was not that hard. Once I was like, okay, Roland can go away for a little bit. Yeah.
I do say the fact this game doesn't have a weapons triangle is a little unforgivable.
Well, it's the other way that's not like Fire Emblem. Yeah. Is there's not really any attacking back when someone attacks you. Right. You just hit them and it moves on to the next turn unless there's like a special ability that the character has.
I'm just making a joke about the title of the game. Not really actually requesting gameplay. Weapons triangle.
I see.
Triangle strategy.
You're right, yeah.
This game already feels like a mashup, though. Triangle strategy, a little bit.
I guess. There's a lot of tactics games that are, like morally based, though. Like, this is more in the vein of, like, Tactics Ogre or Final Fantasy Tactics, right?
I could just see us getting something like this. We would not come up with something this cohesive, so just imagine a fantasy world where Emma and I are good at the last segment of the podcast after, like, what would this be, like 6 years of doing this? But I could imagine, like, Fire Emblem meets Ace Attorney generating something like this, again, if we were better at this.
There's no I guess that scales of conviction is what you're thinking of.
Yeah, I'm thinking of, like,
there's not a morality system.
No, but I'm thinking it's like you have to go around gathering evidence.
I guess
sometimes,
so. Yeah.
And then you have a portion where you, like, convince people. I'm not saying it's exactly like that, and again, I think we would come up with something much more literal. We'd be like, you're at law school and you fight. But I could see this. There's enough of a kind of like a anytime I play a game now, it's like there are two things in the game. I'm like, that's a mashup.
Yeah. I will say, I really like the idea of the scales of conviction.
Yeah.
I'm not sure it's implemented perfectly, but I really like the idea of having to deliberate with, like, your party on what you're supposed to do. It just creates a nice sort of feeling, I guess.
I feel like you... Tell me if I'm remembering this correctly, because it's been a while since you played this game. I feel like you talked at the time about feeling like your convictions should almost have more of an impact.
I don't remember exactly.
I just feel like you talked about it being like, well, but like you could still do things that weren't really in character for yourself.
Yeah.
Which, of course, people can do that.
I do think some of my problem is less about, like, the structure and more that, like, some of the endgame choices are just, like, not good. Like, the very last choice, which I didn't have to make because I got the golden ending, but, like, the 3 endings it, like, lays out for you is, like, why would you do 2 of these? Well, especially why would you do 1 of these? But, like, why would you do 2 of these in, like, any scenario?
Well, it's the perennial problem of a role-playing game, right? I sort of came into this being like, no. This time, I'm gonna be a hard ass. Like, I don't have to have everybody like me. That's really hard. That's a hard role to play in a political game, too.
Yeah.
Because it's like, I'm already putting on my, like, I'm at work face.
Yeah.
Kind of being like, I have to be diplomatic. But if you really could play the game as, I'm gonna be tough, I only care about money, whatever. But people don't play games like this that way.
Yeah.
Even though you have to give them the option to.
Yeah.
But I will continue playing Triangle Strategy. Only because I'm away from I'm a little between games. I don't know how to start like a dragon.
Fire Emblem's coming out,
Fire Emblem is coming out. I brought 3 houses home. It's a good thing that I'm just gonna hole up again this winter, basically.
You could get Persona 3 or 4.
I could.
You could, the like, a Dragon Ishin's coming out in February.
Well, that's, yeah.
There's so many games coming out.
There's so many games at any time. And now it's time to make up one more, right? Okay,
yeah.
How do we mash up Hotline Miami and Triangle Strategy? Warring Guilds of Assassins, obviously.
Yeah. Yeah, like a Guild of Assassins. I was gonna say that, yeah, like, or like a Gang of Thieves if you wanted to set it in Hotline Miami times instead of...
Oh, I wanted to set it in Hotline Miami. You play an assassin in...
Okay, but Guild of Assassins sounds like it's Triangle Strategy times.
Sorry, maybe Guild was the wrong word. Whatever. Take your pick.
Anything but guild. Collective. Group.
Domain.
A domain, yeah.
Yeah.
I love how they spell domain in
Here's
Triangle
some weird
Strategy.
spelling choices in Triangle Strategy.
They're like traditional old time spelling.
That's just always, it's just so bold.
I'm just glad that's why I'm glad there's voice acting, so that when I see doesn't and they say domain, I'm like, oh, okay.
Domain. Okay, like different, you're right, different gangs of assassins. You almost already have that in Hotline Miami, a little bit. Some of them are the chicken face. Some of them are the other, I'll say that again. Because you almost already have that in Hotline Miami, right? You have the chicken gang. Other end. I mean, I know that's not what it is, but you could almost already make that just with the iconography from Hotline Miami.
Sure.
I'd always go chicken gang.
But do you want to have multiple ones?
I was sort of like they have like an uneasy truce.
Oh, you're thinking of the countries. I was thinking about, like, the voting mechanic. Like, you have a group.
Oh, yeah. Okay, you could do that too. But you could do that too. I'm just doing Triangle Strategy, but it's... Well, probably the levels would have to be, like, the more like Hotline Miami style. Games like Triangle Strategy are easier to mash up,
Top-down shooter turn-based?
No, not turn-based. Like, instead of having the battles that are turn-based, it would be top-down shooter.
But then that's just Hotline Miami, but, like, with a gimmick to it.
Yeah.
That's not a mashup.
Well, we build in the voting.
Okay.
And you'd like kill different people. Like at the end, you'd be like, "Am I gonna kill the president?" I don't know.
Just like sitting in the last room, like, "Hey, gang, let's take a second and deliberate."
Well, it'd be like in Hotline Miami when you go back to your apartment and like chill.
Yeah, but you have to make that decision when the president's there, you know?
Just in front of the president, all the assassins being like, "I don't know. This one seems possible to persuade."
Yeah.
Okay. Give me your more robust mashup then.
I don't have one. I just think that it just like you added a different story to Hotline Miami.
Yeah, I mean that's pretty much what I did.
Yeah.
Just proposing Hotline Miami 3. Okay. So we can go but I like it being modern day though. I feel like anything that I make that's set in medieval times is like has been done.
I guess it's sort of Assassin's Creed-y.
Or like even just the Skyrim, like or Elden I almost said Elden Ring, Elder Scrolls. The like Elder Scrolls, like the Thieves Guild and the Assassins, the I can't remember what the Assassin's Guild is called, even though I played 1,000,000 hours of that game. But the Assassin's Guild, the Thieves Guild.
Yeah. I just think it has to be more group-based.
Okay.
So top-down shooter doesn't really work.
Yeah, I hear you. That makes sense. Okay, so turn-based. Well, you know, how many turn-based like gun games do you see? Not too many.
XCOM.
That's one.
Yeah.
That's what I meant. I didn't say there were none. Okay, so you've got like turn-based, but they're more like gun-type battles.
I guess you could make it like more action-y, but like you have to have companions that do like really specific things, I think.
Yeah.
And so you pick the companions that come with you into each mission.
Yeah.
And they like can to make it like we still wanted it to be action, like top-down action, not turn-based. I just think there needs to be a group dynamic because that's like part of triangle strategy, right? So maybe you have like a group of people and you can like pick them out, and for each level you like pick the ones that you want to do with your strategy. So like maybe there's one that like always like charges in, you know, or one that will always flank, or one that will throw smoke bombs.
Well, you can pick like your handler, maybe, right? This has buffs.
Sure.
Yeah, it'd be tricky. I won't deny it would be tricky. I think you could also do something that is primarily a turn-based thing. Maybe I take that primarily. It's on its surface a turn-based thing, but maybe not on all enemies, because this might take a long time.
You can split the difference and do real-time strategy, I guess.
I don't like real-time strategy though, so I don't want to do that.
Okay.
I was proposing turn-based. When you get in the battles, it goes into a real quick, like, shooty thing.
That's weird.
Yeah, I know. I'm trying to be different.
I got like the way that Hotline Miami works is you die in like one hit.
It's like a quick draw.
I hate turn-based ones that make you do like precision button presses.
Yeah, okay. Maybe just for the boss. Like, you get to the boss, and it's like
yeah, but then if you lose, you have to do the whole level again.
Well,
and that
saves right at the boss.
So you just have to keep doing the boss until you hit the button press right? That sucks, too.
I was thinking that maybe with the boss, you'd have, like, a final rush of enemies that you do. Like a Hotline Miami style. But I think I'm forcing it too much here. I think I'm creating the, like, actually, fans of neither genre want this game. So, okay. Alright, what if I did do medieval? Or what if I had, like, more, like, medieval punk?
Medieval? Steampunk?
Well, no, I just want medieval, but, like, punk.
That doesn't make any sense, Madelyn.
Like, medieval, but cool.
So they have leather jackets.
Yeah.
Like Romeo and Juliet.
Yes, like Romeo and Juliet.
Which one is that?
Baz Luhrmann.
Baz Luhrmann.
That is actually exactly the aesthetic. I think there's not enough Romeo plus Juliet aesthetic in like medieval games. No, I like that. I like that a lot, actually. And then you could have the turn-based, and I'd want to do like a riff on the decision system, though. But, like, Hotline Miami almost has that with the, like, animal mask dudes asking you questions.
They ask you questions. You don't get to
I know that. I know you don't get to
answer
answer. But, like, the trappings of it are already there. And I don't want to just, like, totally rip triangle strategies. Maybe it's rectangle strategy. Pentagram strategy.
So you, like, can make, like, moral decisions in your mind that, like, shape you? Disco Elysium?
Yeah. No, I don't know. Oh, this isn't coming together. The Romeo
There's something
plus
there.
Juliet
I
is
really
so
like the
interesting.
Romeo plus Juliet aesthetic.
It's just like triangle strategy with that.
Yeah.
Make it more, in that game it'd be more, you know, person focused, I think. More relationship building focused.
Sure.
Because we're making it. So
Yeah.
it would have to be that
Yeah.
way.
We hate politics.
Oh, okay. Well, listeners, can you help us land this mashup? I feel like it's so close. But it's just not. Emma was like, it can't just be a guild of assassins in the 80s. And it all went downhill from there for me. So can you help us land this? Did you play Hotline Miami? Was Hotline Miami, did it make you contemplate your agency as someone inflicting violence on pixels on the screen? Did you play Triangle Strategy? And did you love all of the explanation of the mining in the beginning? In your life, do you ever feel like you are solidifying your convictions as you answer questions from day to day? And do those questions have, like, green icons to let you know that they're going to be important? If you have answers to any of those questions or anything else you want to say about the episode, you can hit us up on social media. We are on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube at Talk This Podcast. You can also visit our website, www.talkthispodcast.com, where you can read all about the show, check out the games in the hat that Emma is electronically pulling from as I speak, and read our blog featuring long-running series Clickbait Boyfriend and Split Screen. But finally, and most importantly, if you enjoy the show, you should subscribe so you never miss an episode on Sundays at noon. Even here on Christmas Day. We are doing this live on Sunday at noon at Christmas Day. So, do that on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, TuneIn, Spotify, Pandora Podcasts, online and on the app, Overcast, Pocket Cast, anywhere that you can find podcasts. You can find Talk This and subscribe. Next week is our year-end review episode. So we'll talk about our games of the year. We'll talk about our gaming trends. We'll talk about what we're looking forward to in 2023.
Yep.
We'll set some gaming resolutions.
Yep.
Maybe.
Madelyn will not be able to contain herself and will talk for 30 minutes about The Last of Us.
It's gonna be a bad TV show. Maybe it's not. But the week after that, it's time for another 6 weeks of gaming.
7 weeks of gaming.
7 weeks of gaming.
And then it will be, so there'll be a 2-week break before next main quest.
Which is okay. We love a side quest.
Yep.
We'll talk a lot about what we've been playing. Many Talk This games. Probably I will play, well, no, I mean I won't, but probably I will play one of these games in advance of the 7 weeks show.
Maybe.
So you get a little bonus. But Emma, what's the old game that we're going to be talking about sometime in early to mid-January?
Our old game is going to be Armored Core.
In the news.
Yep. And our new game is going to be The Quarry.
Armored Quarry.
Armored Quarry.
Already written my joke. Great. Another game about mining.
I love a game about mining. I don't think there's that much mining in
The Quarry.
The Quarry.
Title suggests otherwise.
Maybe I'm wrong.
We'll find out. Well, listeners, thank you for tuning in to this very special Christmas episode of Talk This. I hope I put you in some holiday cheer. I think Hanukkah is still going on, too.
I don't know.
This very special holiday edition. All winter holidays edition of Talk This. That's it for the show. Thanks for tuning in. It's the last one of 2022.
Yeah.
So, another year's gone by. And listeners, do you have a great one? Do you have a great
I don't
closer?
have a great one.
All right. Listeners, I hope this week that you contemplate important questions in your life.